Hello and welcome back to Tip the Footy, the site that is more than just tips. So in our previous video we did the Premier League prediction table and we did it from 20th to 11th. So if you've not found your club in the 20th to 11th, then you'll be quite interested to find out where we think you'll finish between 10th and 1st. I don't think that 1 and 2 is going to be too much of a surprise to you, but you never know. So in 10th place we've gone with West Ham United. Now, this is the potential to go one of two ways. I think West Ham have brought in Haller, and I think that he will definitely provide, I'm going to say between 12 and 15 goals next season. That might be a bit outlandish, but I think he's got the potential to do so. I think that defensively there may be still some shortcomings, but I quite like Mark Noble. I think he's a reasonable player. I like Felipe Anderson. I think that we'll have a good season from Mikel Antonio. I think that looking at their squad, I think they're more settled now. I think they've acclimatised to their new stadium. I think that 10th is a reasonable finish for West Ham. I'm intrigued to see how they do, but I think Manuel Pellegrini is a winner as a coach. I know he did it with Man City, and obviously there's question marks there with all this FFP stuff, and I'm not going to get into that too much. But I think that 10th is a reasonable position for them, and I think that's where they'll finish. I think this is probably one of the more exciting West Ham sides that we've seen for a while. I think that they've got the potential to make some kind of history with losing. If they lose a certain amount of games, they'll become the team who's lost the most games in Premier League history. I think that's a possibility this season. I'm sure I've read that somewhere, but I think 10th is a very solid position for them, and that's where I believe that they'll finish. So at 9th, now this is probably the first massively controversial one. I'm going to go 9th, Wolves. Now I know they had a really good season last season, being back in the top flight, and they pushed for European places and obviously got the Europa League. I feel that the Europa League is going to have a massive impact on their Premier League season. The reason I think that is that I expect them to do quite well in Europe. I think that they're going to get to maybe the quarters of the Europa League. I think that they're a good side, a very, very good side. I love the players that they've got. I think Neves and Moutinho, Jota, Raul Jimenez. I think they've just got Catrone from AC Milan. I think there's definitely potential there to massive firepower. Doherty, Rui Patricio in goal. They have got a very, very good side, and I just believe that when they're stretched across Europe and league games, the Thursday-Sunday thing will creep in. And I think that maybe they might take an eye off the league if they're doing well in Europe, and I think they will do well in Europe, so therefore I think that their league form will suffer a little bit because of that. So I'm going to go with 9th for Wolves, although they may prove me wrong, because I think they're a fantastic squad. I think that Nuno Espirito Santo has got them playing some very good football, and they do really well against the top 6. Will that continue this season? Possibly. But I think Europa League football will give them a headache that necessarily they don't want. But I do think they'll go deep into Europe, and I think that's where there's going to be a problem, and that's why I believe that they'll finish 9th. So in 8th place, now bearing in mind the news has broken very recently that Harry Maguire will be leaving Leicester, but we're going to go with Leicester in 8th. I think that Brendan Rodgers is a good coach. I mean, there was times when he was Liverpool manager that I wasn't happy with, but I do believe that he's a very good coach. I think adding Perez to the front line takes the pressure slightly off Vardy to be the main man. But I think Maddison and Tielemans are phenomenal. I think that they've got obviously a top-class goalkeeper. Will they replace Maguire in time? We'll have to wait and see. But I think that they've got a decent squad. I like the way they play. I like the fact that they're very, very counter-attacking. But I think now they've got a lot more ability to hold the play in midfield. I think they don't have to go so much direct as they were in their title-winning season. I believe that 8th place will be a very good finish for them, and I think that's where they'll end up this season. So in 7th, and I think they'll push 6th reasonably well. I think we're going to go with Everton. I think that I think they said his name is Moise Ken, but I think that probably won't last very long. I think the overriding name will probably end up being Moise Kean. I think that would be a very, very good sign for Everton. I think they're on the verge of completing that. I think it's something they lacked last season. I think Cenk Tosun is awful. I just don't see whether it's just not being suited to the Premier League, because he's not an awful footballer, but I don't think it's worked out very well from Everton. I think maybe going back to Turkey or maybe another Premier League club who can rely on him less. I don't know. I just don't see him being a useful. He's not been a useful list to Everton. I don't see him being a particularly important part in the club at this time. I think if you look at who they're getting in these attacking positions now, you've got Walcott, Richarlison, Bernard, and now with Moise Kean. I think going forward, very, very good. The one position I think that they haven't identified as an issue would be to replace Kurt Zouma. Whether Yerry Mina will do that role, Michael Keane, I still think that if they can get Zouma back, then that will enhance them further. Pickford, although he's got arms smaller than a Tyrannosaurus Rex, I still think that he is a very good goalkeeper. England's number one and definitely a very good goalkeeper. I think fullback wise, they've got it all looking really good. I think you've got Luca Dean with obviously Baines if necessary, but I think Dean's going to be the guy who's your predominant left back there. So centrally at the back, I'm concerned with the loss of Zuma. They've got Andre Gomez now obviously in there. The other person I'm concerned about is losing Idrissa Gana Gueye. Will Delph fill that role? I don't think he's as mobile as Gueye, but I think that they've got a decent manager. I think they're all pulling in the right direction. They've got the excitement of the stadium move and all that kind of stuff. And I think that Everton will be the best of the rest, and they'll be 7th. So in 6th, probably the section of the video that everyone's been kind of waiting for. 6th, I'm going to go with Chelsea. And the reason I'm going to do that is because they are in the Champions League, and I think with the transfer ban, they've not been able to improve dramatically in certain areas which I think they need improving in. I think that having Lampard there as the coach is going to be a real galvanising factor for the club. I think that with him having experience with these youth players and them being very much looking up to him as some kind of messiah, because they've seen him on the pitch and what he could do, and he's obviously he was a phenomenal player. He didn't do massively well with Derby, I don't think. I mean, did he take them forward? I would argue no. Both times, I think, under Rowett and under Lampard, 6th was where they finished. I don't really see there was much improvement there. But he does have the respect of the players. He does have the respect of the youth players particularly, and they're going to have to use a lot of them this season. I think that they'll have a reasonable run in the Champions League. I don't think they'll go very far in terms of, I don't think they'll get past the quarters, but I think that kind of experience for their players will do them the world of good. So obviously Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, and Pulisic, I think, is going to be a really good addition. I actually rate him higher than I rate Pepe at Arsenal. The one thing I would say though is that he is very young, and he's not going to be a ready-made Hazard replacement. I think it's going to take some time. So I think that they've got all the hallmarks of going again very soon. But at the minute, I think that it's 6th with what they've got. But You know, there was a famous guy who once said, "You'll never win anything with kids." Well, maybe they will. Let's see how well they do. I fancy them to have a decent cup run, maybe the Carabao or the FA Cup. But I think that given what they've got in the transfer ban, I think sixth is a reasonably good position for them to be in. I think Lampard will get time, more importantly. Whereas if you'd have been another manager going in there, you probably wouldn't have had that luxury. So for me, Chelsea sixth. So in fifth place. Now, this has been a difficult one because if you look at Man United and you look at Arsenal, so it's out of these two, Arsenal have got it all right in all their business so far, going forward, getting all that kind of stuff right. If they get Tierney in, very, very good stuff. But I still think defensively they are awful. They've not got enough defensively. Now, this reminds me massively of 13-14 Liverpool, and also very much like early to mid Klopp. I think they've definitely got it right going forward. I think they've brought in some really good players. I think Pepe, Aubameyang and Lacazette is going to look and score a lot of goals, get a lot of goal assists. I think they've got a very good midfield now with Ceballos, Ozil. I don't think they'll miss Ramsey as much. I just feel it at the back. Mustafi isn't good enough at this level. If Arsenal had the funds to go and get a Van Dijk, a Maguire, someone who's going to really enforce that back line, then they are looking at a very serious prospect again. Because I feel that they are so weak at the back. I like Hector Bellerin in at right back. I think he's going to cause a lot of problems going forward. Defensively, he's reasonable, but centrally, I mean, Socrates, he's a yellow card waiting to happen every game. I think they need someone who's like a Joe. You put a Joe Gomez in there, they've got a really, really good chance. But for me, it's Arsenal in fifth. So on to fourth, the top four, the Champions League spots. In fourth, I'm going with Man United. As annoying as that is, because I was hoping that they would finish 19th, obviously. But I think that I don't rate Solskjaer as a coach. There's a lot of sentiment there, and I don't wish him bad. I just don't think he's a top class manager, and until he proves me otherwise, I believe that to be the case. But what I think they've done is in what they're potentially doing in this window with regards to Harry Maguire. I think centre back positions massively important to Man United at the minute. I think bringing in Harry Maguire would absolutely strengthen their defence. With the addition of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I think Luke Shaw, Lindelof, Maguire and Wan-Bissaka is a very, very good back four. De Gea in goal makes that a very, very good back five. So that's a massive plus point for United. Whether I think Luke Shaw could be improved upon, but maybe with a bit of confidence shown from his manager that he is a decent left back. I just don't think he's top quality. Maybe they could improve in that position, but I think defensively that looks pretty solid. And then you go into the midfield. They've got obviously McTominay is. I think McTominay's a good player. He's not proven to be at class of '92 standards yet, but who is at that level? I think he's a decent centre midfielder. I think you've got Pogba if he stays. He's got the potential to be very good, but obviously he can also be very shit. It very does depend on what sort of mood he's in. Maybe with Dybala coming in, if that goes through, that could. I know they say about unlocking Pogba. You've had they name Fred and Matic and anyone else they want to say is going to unlock Pogba. But maybe having a mate like that, someone who's very close with off the field, it might improve his on the field performances. I think it probably would do. So I think that Pogba could be very dangerous this season. And then obviously going forward, Rashford's obviously top quality and still very young. I think Martial's very good. I'm still not convinced the Sanchez move made much sense, and I think that's probably not going to make much of a difference this time round. But if they do get Bruno Fernandes in with Dybala, then they're going to have a very, very strong squad, and it annoys me because the longer Man United stay out the top four, the further they fall behind us. So obviously there is that argument for me, wishing they wouldn't finish there. But I do believe that with what they're doing in the transfer market, and I know it's come late because I've tried to film this as late as possible, because obviously the transfer movement would have an impact on where people finish. I still think they're still a long way behind Liverpool and Manchester City, but I think Manchester United are now about to turn the screw. Now, obviously, there's problems with ownership and Ed Woodward and all that kind of stuff, and I understand that Man United fans are very, very disappointed with the Glazers, and I support that, to be fair. Get rid of the Glazers, and I think that an owner who has a semblance of football knowledge might improve that club further. They're obviously very wealthy. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world still. There's no taking that away from them. And I think that on this occasion, they are going to get back in the top four. And I think that might spring them on again to go and do some good things, which pains me to say, but I think that's probably where they're going to end up. And fourth is probably reasonable with what they've got and what they've brought in. So Man United fourth. So on to third place. And I don't think this has become a massive shock to anyone. I'm going to go with Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur in third. I really like the Ndombele transfer. I think that's a real area in which they needed to strengthen. Obviously, we've seen them going forward. They're very good. It's a tricky one with Spurs because there's probably a few areas they could strengthen, but at what at the expense of who? So defensively, stronger than Arsenal. That's why I think they'll finish above. Going forward, they're maybe getting on par again with Spurs. I really like Son. I think Son's a phenomenal player. If he joined Liverpool, I'll be over the moon. I think Son, Moira, Kane, Lamella always has a really good pre-season. Whether he can stay fit and transfer that into the league remains to be seen. I think Moussa Sissoko is looking better and better all the time as well. Considering when he joined, he's obviously always been a very strong competitive athlete, but as a football player, he sometimes left a lot to be desired. But I think Spurs, under Pochettino particularly, I think Pochettino's a big factor here. I think he's a very good coach, and I think he's arguably, he's definitely top three in the league. I think that he can get this team to go again. I think last season was a bit of a weird one. They didn't draw at all for quite a long period of time. I think they ended up losing 20 games, all told. I still think that if you gave a Tottenham fan third and a trophy, I think they'll take it. And I think there's a possibility. I don't think it'll be the Champions League. I think they'll, depending on groups obviously, but I think they might struggle a little bit more in the Champions League this season and maybe focus a bit more on a domestic cup. But I think third and a domestic cup would be a very good season for Tottenham. And obviously the first year, full year in the new stadium. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on, but I would say third. So in second place, now this has been a grueling decision, but in second place I'm going to go with Liverpool. I think that we're more than capable of mounting a title challenge. Obviously you saw that last season. We were only a point behind eventual winners Manchester City. Should we have strengthened this window? Possibly. I still think that an additional fullback who could play both roles and a wide forward who could play both roles, like Wilfried Zaha, someone like that, would have catapulted us maybe slightly higher. But I think I'm going to caveat this because if Man City go deep into the Champions League, which they're expected to do, and I think Pep Guardiola's been told on numerous occasions that they want the Champions League, and I think that's what he was brought in to do. Although I believe their squad is big enough to fight on all fronts, they've proved that. I think that the focus solely will be on to win the Champions League, and I think that's where Liverpool could usurp them, because I believe that having had the title running last season, having that experience, still be picking up wins under immense pressure, will have served the Liverpool boys, in really good stead. And I think that if City do take their eye off it, and I think it will be very, very close again, very close. I don't see it being any kind of runaway leader here. And I think this could swap, depending on how well Man City do in the Champions League, and if they have a difficult few fixtures, when it becomes like an away leg and you come home and you've got to play a difficult team away, there could be some issues there. It all depends on the draw. A lot of things can happen. Obviously, BT Sport have done this scripted thing. I wouldn't put too much emphasis into that. And I feel that if they do well in Europe, then they might take their foot off the gas a little bit in the league, based on the fact that they're desperate to win the Champions League. If that could happen, then I think Liverpool could take the title. That being said, I still think there's a couple of areas we need to strengthen. We haven't done that. But I have full faith that Klopp can still bring a league title to Liverpool. Is it going to be this season? Well, it all depends on the factors that we've just discussed. We'll see how it goes. But I think so. Obviously, that brings us to number one. It's obviously, because we've named all the other 19 teams, it's going to be Manchester City. I think that the Rodri signing's a very good one. I think it allows them to alternate Fabinho and Rodri in different games, and it may be enough for them to continue their progression. I think Leroy Sané is a loss. I don't think he's a bigger loss as he would be if Liverpool lost Mane or if Liverpool lost Salah. So, I think given the strength and depth that City have got, and the fact that they've proved last season they can compete on multiple fronts, they're going to be the ones to beat, and I think they'll finish first. As before, I've said that I think the caveat is the European draws and who they play after the European games are going to be key here, and also key to how Liverpool perform. I think the top two will be clear by a reasonable margin. So I think it will be based on them two. I think last season it pretty much came down to games between the two clubs. I know you could argue for Liverpool's sake the West Ham draw, the Everton draw, the Leicester draw. There were some drop points in there that you would expect to win. And Sané's goal at the Etihad to beat Liverpool, I think ultimately was probably the real nail in the coffin. You could argue either way about that, but I think that was the one that really let us down. So I would say that if we can progress, do very similar as we did last season, I think if I'll caveat it this way: if Liverpool finish on 97 points this season, Liverpool win the league. I don't think the tally is going to be as high, but I think the gap between third and second it will be reasonably great. I think it is a top two race. It is a two-horse race because they're the two who haven't had to rebuild in any way. They haven't had to add too much to it. So I think, again, top two. I think, again, very close. I think that City will edge it based on the facts that we know now, which is, the 2nd of August. But let's see how that goes. I hope I'm wrong on that one. Obviously, I'm a Liverpool fan. I want Liverpool to win the league. But I think in fairness, City are stronger. And yeah, so that's our top. That's our 20 Premier League teams in the order we think they'll finish. If you've got any comments at all about this, get them in the comments below. It'll be interesting to see how you feel. Do you feel that we've got your team dramatically wrong? Do you feel that we've overestimated your team? Do you think that they're not ready to climb the heights that we've said? It'd be really interesting to hear all your points of view from all 20 clubs, because I want to see how what people's thoughts are on the upcoming Premier League season. Obviously tomorrow the Championship season starts. I haven't done a prediction table in terms of that, because that's probably arguably one of the most unpredictable leagues in football. It's definitely one of the most competitive second tier leagues in the world. So make sure you get your comments in below. There will be a video out later on today, possibly early tomorrow, doing a build up to the Charity Shield, because obviously the curtain opener, and we want to have a bit of a chat regarding that. But most importantly, if you did enjoy this video and you're happy with where your club finished, like, comment and subscribe, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. You've always been great, as always. I'm Dante. Take care.